we have with us this morning, joining us as the first guest in a series that I am welcoming with open arms because I think we need it. Just by listening to what the callers are saying, sometimes when they call in on a specific topic, looking at the things that are going on in Trinidad and Tobago, I think we need to have conversations in terms of mental health, right? And the way that, you know, and trauma, especially, and how people deal with it. Things like that, where we're going to take it bit by bit, part by part. And with us this morning, we have Dr. Brent Pereira, who is the clinical director at Elder and Associates Limited. And we're going to find out what they're about. And then we were going to get into the topic of the value of help-seeking behavior. All right, so now, Dr. Pereira going to break it down to you. I learning here. I am the student this morning. So Dr. Pereira, good morning to you. And for the next 15 minutes, people, I want you all to pay attention, because a lot of the things that we're talking about, a lot of the questions we're asking is basically has to do with a lot of problems people are having mentally. And we're either ashamed to admit it, or we don't know how to deal with it, right? So we're going to get to that. So Dr. Pereira, first off, Elder and Associates Limited, you're the clinical director there. What are some of your functions here as director?
So, Elder Associates Limited, as the clinical director, I am responsible for all of the clinical operations.
Right.
Yeah? Elder Associates Limited, we've been around for the last 30 years, and we are a provider of employee assistance program services as well as other psychological services.
Right.
So like I said, we've been doing that for the last 30 years, and I want to say pretty well, like we've been doing it.
Nice
Yeah.
one.
We are accredited by the Council on Accreditation, which is an international body that accredits organizations that provide human services.
Okay.
So the fact that we have been accredited since 2013 and reaccredited until 2025, and of course we're seeking reaccreditation again, means that we meet the international standards for providing mental health care, and specifically for providing employee assistance program services.
Okay, now when you say you're in charge of the clinical aspect of things, when people hear clinic, they're thinking the health center.
Okay.
Or they're thinking, right, so is that part of the services?
So when we talk for counseling services, we provide a range of services.
Right.
Clinical meaning counseling services, and that would be individual sessions, family sessions, couple sessions. It also would include services that we provide to organizations as an EAP. So
Okay.
we do workshops, we do trainings. Also as well, a lot of the work that we do is really focused on the spirit of employee assistance programs, which is how can we help employees be their most productive selves, or be their best selves at work.
Okay.
Yeah. So the concept of an employee assistance program really came about because employers recognize that employees can check, concerns that they might have at the door at security at 8 a.m., work all day until 4 p.m., and then take it back up at 4 p.m., right? So the idea is, if I know, right? I wish it was that easy.
I know I'm laughing, but go ahead. Go ahead.
So the reality is, if I am distracted, either based on concerns that I might be having or concerns that my loved ones might be having, it means then that I am not fully present at work. And I'm not giving the best that I can.
Right.
Yeah? And that could represent a cost to the organization. Because if I am distracted, it means then that apart from me not being as productive as I can be, it could result in costly mistakes, accidents. And so the idea is organizations and employers recognize that the cost of that can be offset by having an employee assistance program. Essentially, what it does is, how can we help the employee resolve the issues, or help them, the quicker that they have resolution, the quicker that they can return to being their most productive self. Yeah, and so that is really the spirit of an employee assistance program. I know that people have other ideas about it. The EAP is not meant to be a punitive tool.
Right.
It's not meant to be this concept that you're being sent to the principal's office.
Right.
The EAP is a confidential service that is meant to support employees and support the organization on the whole.
All right, great, man. That's a terrific program because, that's one of the problems we've had in Trinidad and Tobago, and a lot of people complain about is the lack of productivity. And if we were, able to reach the heights we're supposed to be reaching in terms of productivity, well, the sky is the limit.
Right.
But a lot of that has come, to refer to the public sector. But I love my public servants, you all know that. All right, but we always question the productivity of public servants and the public service and things of that nature. But all right, so we understand all of that.
Right.
And the service. Mental health is where you want to take the conversation.
Right.
But before you do that, right, you were explaining something to me before we came on, right? That there is a difference between mental health and mental illness. Could you explain that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So most times when we think about mental health, we think about, the forbidden word, people who might be crazy or who might be mad.
Right.
We think about somebody with a diagnosed disorder, right? Mental illness is when a person has been diagnosed by a mental health professional, right, with a clinical disorder from the DSM. Yeah?
Okay.
So if you have a diagnosed disorder, then that would be mental illness.
Okay.
However, when we think about mental health though, mental health is an issue for all of us. Because mental health goes beyond just, do I have a disorder or not? In the same way how when we think about physical health, it isn't just the absence of a disease. So okay, well, my doctor has not diagnosed me with diabetes or hypertension or some type of heart disease. That does not necessarily mean that, okay, that's not the be-all and the end-all of the health conversation.
Right.
Yeah? When we talk about physical health, we look at, are you able to do the things you need to do? Are you able to go about your life and do things and not be out of breath and and not be on the brink of collapse? Yeah?
Right.
So the same way with mental health, right? I might not be diagnosed with a disorder, right? But the conversation doesn't end there.
Right.
It continues.
Because the disorder could always be developed over a period of time, depending.
Yes, but similarly with physical illnesses that are diagnosed, right? We're still not just out here trying to avoid having a heart attack. Yeah, because it isn't just about avoiding,
right.
a medical diagnosis. We still want to be healthy. And when I think about being physically healthy, it means, like I said, being able to do the things that I need to do. Being able to, do things with my friends, do things with my children, do things with my family.
Yeah.
And so similarly, when we talk about mental health from a psychological perspective, am I able to enjoy life? Am I able to deal with the stresses of life in an adaptive way? Am I able to contribute to my community? And these are the markers of mental health, or even we would say wellness, because those two terms are, out there a bit more now. And so we're moving away from the idea of mental illness just being these very finite terms, either healthy or not, but looking at rather it exists in a continuum. The same way how physical fitness exists in a continuum. So we might have people who could run a marathon and not, be fine.
Yeah, boy.
With a breeze, right?
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
So those are people on one end of the physical fitness continuum, right? And then you have people on the other end who, with 3 steps, need to take a breath.
The outer breath, yeah.
And so similarly with mental health, on one end of the continuum, we might have persons who might be diagnosed with a clinical disorder, right? Which can be managed as well, like with medication, etc., right? On the other end of the spectrum, we also have persons who are living their best life. And that's kind of where we want to be. Most of us would fall somewhere in the middle. And the idea is how can we gradually move ourselves closer and closer to the side of living our best life as a, as a frame of reference.
Okay.
Yeah? So when we think about, and I'm coming back to the physical fitness, because I think many times there's a stigma attached to conversations around mental health. but normalizing it like physical health, I think, is important. And the same way how we might make resolutions, you know, I want to get into fitness, or I want to be healthier physically. How can we adopt that same approach towards our mental health? You know, and so how can I live my life better? How can I live a more satisfying life? And satisfying according to my definition and to my terms.
Okay, so all of that is the help-seeking behavior that you're talking about. When persons ask themselves, how can I, when you're in the mental state that you're saying, listen, how can I improve on myself? How can I be my best self? Once you have that, once you're focused on that, is that what is defined as somewhat help-seeking?
Well, I think that's step one. So step one, I think if we reconceptualize, you know, or rethink the way we approach mental health, right? And we understand that it isn't just about having a disorder. It isn't about, like, you know, being crazy or not crazy, but rather seen as we could all benefit from improving the way we make decisions, improving the way we approach things, improving the way that we approach life. One is recognizing that. Second is then acknowledging or identifying what are the steps I need to do that, you know? And so the help-seeking behaviors would be, all right, I have an idea of what I need or what I might want to do. Next, I need to take steps actively and intentionally to do so.
Okay, but during that process, what happens is sometimes we get these obstacles that come in our way, like, right? So sometimes things happen in life. So you might, life happens, right? Life just drops right in the middle of you. I mean, I look at the situation here, and I'll just bring a current issue. There was a mother of two that was shot dead in Vistabella over the last 48 hours. She has 2 children. Let's say she has a husband, things like that. Let's say they are a family that generally were happy and moving towards something, and then something like that happens now. What is the position that they're in? Not only the adult, but the children themselves. We have a situation with a 4-year-old being beheaded. The mother, and well, the father saying that he had not seen his daughter for a while. The mother, on the other hand, was in this situation, had to run to the police, come back. The police are all traumatized. I mean, these things that happening in the country on a daily basis to people in specific, let's say, like, we target the police. Let's just say we talk about the police. Because this morning, if I could bring that into the discussion, we see that the cops are traumatized after the murder of the 4-year-old girl. So, I mean, a police officer, and I'm just drawing this reference, he might be sitting, going to work every day, trying to be the best police officer that he could be. Right? He's in a good mental space. And then he's exposed to something like this and traumatized. Where does that put an individual, and how do they get help to overcome that? Do you ever overcome things like that, certain things in life?
And so that's a good question, right? And so the examples that you raise are by no doubt traumatic events and incidents, right? I also want to highlight that whereas many times we might recognize these large significant events as traumatic, there are also multiple mini traumatic encounters that we all have, yeah?
Right,
so
that we never really pay attention to.
So I kind of want to normalize traumatic experiences, and not normalize it in terms of, hey, okay, get over it.
Right.
But more so recognizing the fact that as we navigate life, we have a myriad of experiences, yeah? Some negative, and looking at how are they impacting on us, you know? And are they disrupting our functions? Some more naturally, we just identify that they would, but sometimes the little things also add up and impact us. So you mentioned the persons who might be directly affected by these horrible events, right, or experiences, but also other people on the sidelines are also impacted by it, you know, generally as a country, as a nation, yeah? So I think recognizing the impact of that is one. Second is you ask the question, where do we go for help, yeah? So there are multiple avenues, I would say. So number one, because of course, well, I'm from Elder Associates Limited, and we provide, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
We provide employee assistance program services, right? So I would say that we are one of the EAP providers in Trinidad and Tobago. So one of the first things that I look at, like you mentioned, the police service, yeah? Most organizations, and as well the public service, like, they have an EAP provider attached to the unit. Now the thing is, right, many persons might not be aware that their organization has an EAP service. So with the EAP service, right, how the EAP works is essentially your organization, they pay for the counseling services, yeah?
Right.
So it's a service or benefit that's provided to employees by their organization.
Okay.
Yeah? So in the case of, for example, if in the line of duty, so in the case of police officers, or actually sometimes just customer service representatives in an organization, right? Because interacting with people, sometimes you never know what is walking through the door.
What is going to happen, yeah.
But at any day, at any given time, right? So when organizations provide EAP services, and the EAP is meant to be a confidential service. So I know people have ideas about, you going to tell my employee everything I said. EAPs are confidential, and it's provided as a benefit to you by your organization. So that's the first avenue, I guess, that we encourage persons that they could access help. So talk to your HR department. Elder Associates Limited might be the EAP provider, or they might have a contractual obligation with another provider, and that's okay, but find out. So that's one source of accessing help.
It's interesting that you mentioned that you mightn't even know that you're working, you're working with an organization that provides that service, so you mightn't know. All right, yeah, go ahead.
So find out, ask your HR.
It's an EAP service, people?
Yes.
Right.
Employee Assistance Program, right? So that's one avenue. Now, second as well, right, in Trinidad and Tobago, I think we are fortunate that the Ministry of Health has provided a range of mental health clinics, I think, in each of the health centers in different regions. So that is also an option, right? Through the public health system, access to mental health care is available. Even in addition to that, there is an excellent resource that the Ministry of Health provided and maintained. So if you go to findcareTT.com, there's a website with a range of support resources. Right. So you find resources throughout Trinidad and Tobago for children and adolescents or for families. So where can people go to get help? You have numbers, you have organizations that provide the services that people might need. So those are some of the options. And then in addition to that, of course, there are a range of mental health service providers in Trinidad and Tobago. So we have a host of private practices that are run by psychologists, by social workers, by counselors. And so the care is there, is available, and I encourage people to find out what options are available to you. And I guess as well, what might best suit your needs and who might best suit your needs.
Right. The other thing too, when we're talking about, we know the help is available, right? But to the family members or the friends or, just the persons within the circle of someone who is going through a mental health journey.
We're all going through a mental health journey.
We all are, but that particular person that is seeking help at that time, and they're bothered, and it's affected their productivity, and it might affect the way that they deal with their family at home. How much time is needed? How much patience does the people around that individual, how much patience do they need to have? And the understanding that they have to have that, listen, this is what he or she needs at this point in time. And, we have to support.
Right.
Yeah.
So the time question is not one I can answer. Because there's no one answer.
But the answer to the question. The answer to the question without without answering the answer, because that was my point. Because there is no, to me, there is no there is no timeline on it, because at any point in time in your life, you could think about it again. And you could it might be affected as bad as you may have been affected years before, but it still has this, to me, like things in the mind, it could be the loss of a loved one, naturally, I lost my father in 2022, sometimes I just sit down and I do my good and done, you know, and then just so daddy pop in my head, and I just go into a different kind of zone, a different vibe. So at any point in time, one could be affected by such.
Right.
So there is really no timeline that you could identify.
But as you put it, right, we're all on a mental health journey, because essentially if we're looking at mental health, right, is essentially how are you navigating spaces, how are you navigating the world. So therefore, at various times we each might encounter, I guess, more significant challenges.
Right.
And so therefore, I think the notion is not that do we need to have patience with this family member or that uncle or that aunt, but rather how can we have patience with each other across the board, not just as family members, but as a society. You know, there's the quote that says everybody is fighting, you know, a battle that we're unaware of, you know? And so how can we together as a community, and I mean as a global community, be supportive of each other and understanding that, okay, you know what, this person might be, I don't know what this person might be going through at this time. And so taking responsibility for myself, because essentially in any interaction, right, takes two people to negotiate how it goes.
Takes two to tango.
So if I recognize that this person that I am interacting with, like this energy that they bring into me, I realize that this can be like, if I just say good morning to you and you go off on a rant, then how am I then able to say, you know what, this is not about me? And so I take myself out of that equation.
Right.
Rather than adding to that, but what wrong with you? How you gonna talk to me so? And that is just fueling something and realizing that, you know, sometimes it's not about me.
I have a lot of that going on in place right now, eh? It's like people don't know how to deal with conflict peacefully. It's like everybody on edge. It's like you say good morning to somebody and then you're like, oh, you don't answer me so, and then the you know, the confrontation starts.
The interaction de-escalates, right?
Right.
So, well, descends, I should say, rather than de-escalates. But the idea is, like I mentioned, we're all on a mental health journey as we navigate life. Whether we want to acknowledge this or not, life is challenging. Yeah? And so how do we deal with that? And so at any given time, right, I don't know what a person might be dealing with, and also what I might be dealing with. We might be dealing with the same things, but my capacity to deal with it right now might be different because I have so many other things that I juggle.
Right.
You know? And so essentially when in that interaction, again, like I said, it might not be about this person in front of me. I'm interacting with you, but it's really based on what I am internally experiencing.
Right.
So it's not about you. And maybe if we better understand that, one, in my interactions with others, ask myself, is this about me? You know, and if I realize that this is not about me, you know, there's the term, not my sink, not my dishes.
Right.
You know, and so I am not going to take up this fight with this person right now.
Right.
You know, and also for us, recognizing maybe sometimes I am not at my best capacity.
Right.
And so when I know that, am I taking the steps to be in a better place to interact with others? Am I recognizing that? Because remember, as we said, if mental health or wellness is about how am I navigating spaces, am I doing it successfully? You know, am I doing it in a satisfying way? Right? If I am satisfied, if I feel like, you know, like life is doing well for me, I'm successful, I'm doing the things that I would like to do, or experiencing it the way that I would like to, my interactions with others will be different. And when I find that I'm in a space where I'm not navigating spaces or navigating the world in a way that I want to or I would like to, that's just the start of the conversation. What am I doing? Like, am I going to stop and check myself and say, okay, and it might not necessarily mean I need to go to a professional, but I need to take certain steps to manage myself, you know?
Right.
And that might be, what are the things that make me happy? What are the things that bring me joy? What are the things that bring me peace? You know? Because as you mentioned, people, if everybody walking around at 100, and so at the drop of a pin, it's not going to take much for an explosion. You know? But when I realize that I am at 80% capacity, right, then I need to say, okay, how can I lower this? So that the slightest annoyance from another person doesn't push me over the edge.
Right.
And that's what we talk about with managing your mental health overall. Yeah, because you have a lot of people walking around who are angry and who are hurt, and it's just bubbling below the surface. And so little things might tip it over, and we ask ourselves, well, why this person getting on so? It was only this, like that is unjustified or uncalled for, or the response, doesn't match the interaction. And it might be because there's so much else that might have been brewing before that. And so I think the idea of each of us taking responsibility for managing ourselves, how we feel, how we navigate spaces. And that starts with a bit of introspection.
Right.
Asking myself, like, am I living a successful life according to my terms?
Right.
Like, am I coping with life well? Am I dealing with the stresses of life? Because it will come. Am I managing it effectively? And those are the questions we need to start asking ourselves. Yeah, because each of us needs to take responsibility for managing our own health. And I would say, and it's the same way how we manage physical health, mental health needs to be part of that conversation. And seeing it as a continuum, not just as either, a crazy or not crazy, or I have a diagnosis or I don't have a diagnosis, but rather, how can I move closer and closer to that space where I am living my best life? Where I am navigating the world in a way that I am proud of, in a way that I want to.
All right, nice one. Yeah. So Dr. Pereira, well, we went a little over 15 minutes. Maybe just by about 10 minutes. But the discussion is very interesting. And like I said, people, this is like the first of a series that we're going to do. We're going to touch on different topics as we go along. Anything you want to say in closing before we wrap up?
So again, like what I want to remind Christians, one, to include mental health as part of your overall health concern or your overall, when you think about health, not just physical, but include mental health in that conversation. Two, understanding that mental health exists on a continuum, just like physical fitness, we have, I would say, wellness, and so think about it in that sense, from persons who might be in distress to the other end where you see people living their best life, and that is where we want to move with baby steps. You don't start to run a marathon just like that, right? So you just start taking, little steps towards either, okay, I'll walk for 5 minutes today, so similarly, the way that we take a very intentional and planned approach to managing physical health, can we do that as well with mental health? And then the third point that I want to, of course, emphasize is the fact that help and support is available. And so talk to your HR about the EAP benefits that your organization might provide, but also in general, findcareTT.com. There are a range of findcareTT.com. FindcareTT.com. And so there are a list and a range of resources that we can access as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago.
All right, great. Well, Dr. Pereira, thanks a lot for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
It was terrific seeing you again. And just because I remember the last time when we met, we were there, right, in the meeting? Yes. Right, I remember that, right. So good seeing you again. And people remember, not because you're struggling with mental health issues means that you're crazy. It just means you're going through life and you might need a little help in getting you from point A to point B. All right? So nothing is wrong with that. And one more thing. Talking to people, right? When somebody's bothered by something, a lot of people like to keep it to themselves. They don't like to tell everybody what's going on with them. And we know that makes it worse because it means that it's just building up inside of you. So when you keep things to yourself, you're more likely to snap. I'm just asking if that is correct, because to me, like people who express themselves and talk their problems, they in talking it out, it helps, it brings a great level of relief.
So the thing about it is this, right? So we each deal and process things in a different way. Yeah, we deal with things differently. So because I might not be talking about something does not mean that I am not processing it internally.
Okay.
There's a difference between I might not be talking it out, but I am reasoning and thinking it through and you know, and dealing with it on my own, versus I just push it down. I'm not talking to you, as I'm not even talking to myself about it, meaning that internal dialogue. I'm not asking myself, well, how do I feel about this, acknowledging that I am upset, or maybe I should do this or that or the other. So that is different, right? Talking it out with a person can be helpful because you get additional perspectives, because sometimes if it's just you in your head, it could sometimes get confusing.
Yeah.
So I would say the idea is, as long as we have found effective ways and means of processing and dealing with things, be it through silent meditation, you know, so I'm thinking about it, I'm kind of letting it go. So there are a range of ways to deal with things. So the idea, though, is that I am addressing it and dealing with it, as opposed to just stifling it and pushing it down and ignoring it.
And ignoring it.
Yeah.
All right, so people take that with you today. We got to take a break. When we come back, we have some birthdays to get to and some ad-libs, and I think we have Daniel Francis here yet? Yeah. All right, Daniel Francis is here, man, so we'll chat with him as well. So stay tuned for all of that. Dr. Pereira, and of course, remember, Elders and Associates Limited, all right, are one of the providers that you could look out for, and it is findcareTT.com.
Yes.
All right, people, so check them out if you're looking for help, or if you know somebody that needs a little help. All right, don't be afraid to give a little assistance where assistance is needed. We'll be back after this.